Hello and welcome to another episode of FreeCodeSession. My name is Jason Bach, and today I'm still not on the compiler. I keep saying that I'm going to start working on this compiler, and I need to. I really, really need to, but it was a Sunday today, and just a little bit past halfway on my 2-week vacation of the winter holiday, and decided I'm not going to do really anything except sit around, watch videos and code, and then I got really distracted. So I had some intention of starting it today, but I started getting distracted by some things in rocks. I was looking the previous night at some really, really low-hanging fruit, some issues that I had open from a while ago, and I realized those were just not, they weren't there, or they really had no more relevance. And just as things happened, I started digging a little bit more and a little bit more into things, and uncovered 3 problems today. And it took me a while to not undo, but to resolve the problems that I found. And unfortunately, I was just doing everything locally, no branches or whatever, so I started getting myself down a hole that I was kind of like, man, to get out of this hole, I really need to solve all this. So fortunately I did. And I want to talk about the problems. It would have been fun if I did this as a live stream, just all day would have been going through this stuff, because it took me a while to finally get to a resolution point. But let me just talk quick about the ones that I found. This one I'm still going to do. I'm going to actually try to fix this one after I explain these other 2. But the first one was when I found out, I think this is what the start of it was, is I upgraded to 2.2. I think this was the reason why. But I said, hey, I'm on .NET Core 2.0 with some of my stuff, let's make them 2.2, and then I started noticing things failing. One of the things failing is that I was writing a method that came from TextWriter, where the cancellation token is supposed to be set to default. If you actually look at the metadata, go-to definition, if you do F12 on something that you don't have the code to, you don't own, you'll get like this metadata representation in Visual Studio. And it'll show you correctly that this should be the default value, because cancellation token is a struct, so it can't be null. Interestingly, on docs right now, it doesn't show this. It doesn't show that it should be default. It shows that it should be null, which isn't correct. If you actually try writing this, you get a compilation error. This one right here. So I kind of went, that shouldn't be too hard to fix. So found out that, during all my code that I changed, and somewhere in there is how I figured out how to fix this, which is you end up looking at the type, and you say, if it's optional default value or something like that, but it can't have a raw default value. And then if it doesn't have one, then you got to look to see if it's a value type, because if it's a value type, then you need to say it's equal to default, not equal to null. And then when I did that, I realized it was either that or something else, where in 7.1 or 7.2 of C# they added that you can just say default. So you don't have to say like default of the type in parentheses. You can just say default. If the compiler can figure out for the type, it'll just know, oh, you mean the default of that. And then I had to figure out, how do I set the language version of what you're compiling? And I actually want to show you this, because it took me, I think if I search for .latest, and let's see. Yeah. Yes, it's here. Okay, so what you have to do is, if you're parsing a syntax tree, at least here, this is how you do it. That's how you actually set the language version, is you set the latest. And you can set it like 7.1, 7.2, whatever you want. But I had to set it to the latest version, and this took me a while. I thought maybe it's on the compilation options, maybe it's somewhere else. No, it's when you actually do parse syntax tree. That's where you actually set it. And I think I actually had to look in the Roslyn source code to figure out, well, there's a language version, but it's a read-only property, so that's got to be set somehow. And I think by looking something up, I realized, oh, you actually have to do it here, not somewhere else. So just as a tip, this is how you actually set the language version of code that you're trying to actually build the tree from. Okay, so there's that. Then I ran into something even more insidious, which was going up to .NET Core 2.2. I started getting a bunch of errors that had to do with span of T or read-only span of T. So these types are special types. They're special in that you can't use them as values to generic parameters. Okay, and one place that comes up with is in, I think it's expectation. Is it argument expectation? I think it's this one at least, and it was coming up in some other areas, I think. But the point of it is that you can't put like argument expectation span of char or whatever it is. It fails. It just tells you can't do that, and you end up getting I forget the compiler error that you get. But I couldn't find out. So there's a couple things as I started digging into this. You can't do pointer types. I've already handled that. That's not allowed. But there's nothing to say, hey, I can't do this as a generic parameter, as a type parameter. So, which sucked because I'm like, well, now I have to special case it. How do I find out? What can you not pass something in as a generic argument? No, you can. You just have to know it's pointers. And then also these two types. And maybe there is a way to do this, but I couldn't quite figure one out. What made it worse is that ROX is actually .NET Standard 2.0. These show up in .NET Core 2.1. They added a bunch of members. I have a method in ROX that basically goes through the assembly that contains object, which for .NET Framework can be, which will be MS Corelib, but with .NET Core or anything else, it can be in a whole bunch of different places. So you can't assume that. But I use that as kind of a test to weed out problems. I did that when I was first creating ROX. It's kind of a stress test. It tests ROX as an option to say point it at an assembly and have it generate the mock types all at once, so that in your test then you don't have to actually generate the mock type. They're all there. And so that tests that, and it's also a good stress test of that. And the stuff that's in the CLR can be kind of gnarly at times. So it was a really good first test for me to exercise a lot of things in ROX that I was assuming and I shouldn't have. And this brought up another one, which is in .NET Core 2.2. Lots of like system I/O types now have things where they're taking span T or read-only span of T in methods. And I couldn't mock those because the code that I do underneath the scenes to make sure that the expectations you set up will actually happen can't use this as a value to a type argument. So I started going, okay, I'm going to have to special case it. So I did things to say, hey, is it span like? Is the type that you have, span like? The problem is I can't actually say type of span. I have to actually use string comparisons because in .NET Standard 2.0 it doesn't know what span of T or read-only span of T is. So what I ended up having to do, let's see if I can find that example real quick. It's down here somewhere. So that's what I had to do because I couldn't actually rely upon getting a type. So this is definitely really hacky. Now memory actually works. You can actually use memories because memory, I will get the semantics of this wrong, the details of it, so look it up. Don't take what I'm about to say as gospel. But essentially span of T's or spans have to stay on the stack. So it becomes harder if you make them part of a generic. And they also, I thought, really can't be used across asynchronous method calls for a lot of technical reasons. Memory and read-only memory can. So those are not disallowed. You can actually use those in places. They are somewhat slower from what I heard, but they have the capability of if you grab a memory of T, which works just like span of T, But then you do an async call, what you have is still correct. It still works. So I started thinking and I actually tweeted today. It's kind of weird that if I think about it, that asynchronous IO methods are taking spans and read-only spans. But should they? Because what happens if what you give it actually goes across an async call? Would that or would that not work? And so I thought that was a little strange. Be that as it may, I had to figure out a way to handle this, and so I basically handle it right now as a pointer type, which is you can't do it. I don't let you mock methods that have pointer types in them, and I don't let you mock methods that have span and read-only a span. Kind of sucks. This is somewhat of a limitation of. I checked it too. Actually, now that I think about it, I should take that out. I will. Because on my sketchpad here, I believe I was referencing MOQ to see if they had the same problem, and they do, which is you can't use span types in what they have is it.is, any, or is, or whatever. You can't do that here either. So, it's a limitation of the way I've done this in terms of how I set up the expectations and specifying them. One thing I do have as an item to look at is to maybe have it so you can type, and I won't do it here, but somewhere in rocks is if I do like something, I say var rock is equal to rock dot create, whatever that type is, and then you say rock dot handle. Right now I do that weird thing where you're basically doing an expression and you'll say like, dot foo, and basically what you're saying here is that I expect to call foo at that time. At some point when I actually get the actual mock type. So now I say chunk dot foo, and then I can say rock dot verify. I'm expecting Notepad to have IntelliSense. The thought would be is actually to do something like handle. And maybe I just by default saying the thing you want to specify is like this. Or something like that, which basically I take this, I parse it and I figure out what it is that you're actually trying to specify. And maybe that plus maybe some things I do at runtime get around that limitation so that I don't have to, and this I think opens up some other things I've looked at in terms of delegates and out parameters and ref parameters. They don't work very well with actions and funcs at all either. So that's another idea is to do that. Maybe create an analyzer that will tell you, hey, this isn't, like if I did boo instead of foo and there was no boo on whatever I'm doing, that it would say, nope, you can't, that's already an error. So you wouldn't have to wait until execution time to find out that little code snippet per se isn't correct. But basically that's how I fixed it, and now it still all works. It's just that you can't mock those types. So I feel like maybe sometime in 2019 I'm going to not do a big rewrite of rocks, but put in some features to make it a lot more flexible. And as I've always said with rocks, I don't expect it. Some people don't like mocking anyway. I think it's a tool that has its purpose, and sometimes you use it and sometimes you don't. But I know that like MOQ and Substitute to some degree fake it easy. There's other ones out there that have had more popularity, and I have no visions of having a library that's going to get millions of downloads. But it's a fun playground, and it really makes me think a lot about some edge cases in .NET that I just don't think about a lot all the time. There's also one that I've realized, a simple one, that I think I say it here. Yeah, the return type for try create is actually a special type that just has two values in it, and now that C# has tuples, hey, why don't I just return a tuple instead of a custom type create result? And so maybe something like this, though arguably that would be a breaking change. So do I go through the whole rigmarole of making this obsolete? But you can't change it by return type, so I'd have to have a whole new method by some different name. But do I have that many customers that would care? I don't know, and I don't really think I would care that much either. All right, so there's a lot of just coding and diving in and trying to get back to where I was, and I'm finally there. Okay, so this is the one I want to address, which if you make a mock that does not, of a type that does not belong in a namespace, what ends up being generated is a type that will be like namespace and then all of the mock code. Because I'm always assuming you're going to put in a namespace. Well, what happens if you don't? And there's no rule in C# that says you have to put something in a namespace. Okay, so we're going to be a good person and actually create a branch, which I was not doing today, which is really, really stupid. So we're going to say 103 fix type with no namespace. Alrighty, there we go. And let's just take this out because it's not needed. Let's do that and just make sure that this no longer has any of the references, and it doesn't. It shouldn't. No, it doesn't. Oh, we don't need that anymore either. Okay, so let's get to this. First thing I want to do is create a test to make sure that this is actually going to fail first. One other thing I was struggling with is I noticed that some of my tests take like 10 or 15 seconds. Not 10 or 15 were taking a long time. There's one or two that are going to take 3 to 4 seconds. Those are the ones that generate all the types like within MS Core Lib and whatever. But other type methods were like taking a second or two long. I'm like, that's just weird. And I think in part of the problem is that the first time something actually tries to create a mock and compile it and emit it and all that stuff, you're warming up the compiler API, and so you'll actually see this when you debug it. You get this huge spike and hit of memory and time, and then once you actually do it the first time, then you're fine. After that, it's pretty flat and it's pretty fast. But I was trying to think, could I do something where I have like a one-time startup thing across the whole assembly that warms it up? But then there's a fair amount of tests in here that have nothing to do with actually generating a mock. So now all those tests, if I actually have to debug them or whatever, I take the suffrage of hitting that compilation the first time, and I don't need to, so I had to take that out. All right, where do I want to put this? Trying to think what makes the most sense of where this should actually live. Because I have all these tests about handling a specific method. This isn't a method. This is actually makes are pretty straightforward. Those are actually ones that don't have expectations. Do just make a separate class that would only have one? What do I actually have in here? Create, remake, try, create. And type is sealed. Well, yeah, try create is telling you if it couldn't rather than throwing an exception. So it's not necessarily that. They don't. This isn't an exception kind of thing. Why am I struggling over where I should put this damn test? These are all handles, functions, properties, full interface tests, event tests, class tests. You know what? I'm going to put it here. Well, these are. There should be like interface tests. Wouldn't you think? Full interface tests. These are just type. They're just mock type tests. They're not. They're not of anything really. Oh, jeez, why am I? Just make a damn type and put it in there. Let's just call it namespace test. That's fine. And one thing I didn't do here is I was in some later projects. I know I've been not doing like CL and void. You can actually in unit you can just say public void create when type has no namespace. Okay, but you can do this. You can say that. Okay, so now let's actually do. Just put this in here. Or no, let's just do public interface. I have. That's got to be a static. I have no name space. Void foo. So now we do our rock. Rock handle. Okay, now this should fail when I run this. I've noticed that sometimes it doesn't put the what? Oh, whatever. Maybe you've been open too long today. I don't know. Okay. Oh, right there. Good. Bound to the command. Yeah, because you're too slow. Jeez. Well, it fails. And it fails because, yeah, compilation exception. I know exactly why it's failing. Now I just have to figure out, let's go look at the templates, because there's a class template. Yeah, the class definition. This should be, this is going to just be sweet. This is going to be so much fun. What happens if you don't not string, null or white space. If that's okay, then what I want is namespace. Yeah. Else. String that. Oh yeah, how do you gotta fool it, I think. Oh, no, I'm overthinking this. This should actually be like its own thing. There. So if you actually have a namespace, then it will put in namespace. Otherwise, it won't. Now, the only thing is that it's going to put these braces around it, which is going to look a little odd. But that's okay, I think. I think that's actually all right. So let's see now. Wait, what did you... Stop. What the hell did I just do? Let's see what it does now. Nope, still doesn't work. Okay. Alright, let's back into debug. Let that run. Oh my god, I am not in a release build. Shouldn't complain too much. I couldn't imagine what it's like to be on the Visual Studio team of one way or the other. But man, there's sometimes where, like, the Test Explorer will just suddenly, if you go from like debug to release, it suddenly shows you double the amount. Now, why are you complaining? What the? Because I'm... Oh my god. There. Now just, please. Oh my god. Just run the test. What the? Why are you being so difficult? I don't know. I really want to still be a fan of Visual Studio at times. I just want to chuck it out the window too. Again, I don't want to complain too much. I mean, it's doing a lot, but when I've been watching Emo or however you say his name, I need to get that right. When he's been doing his live streams of Minsk, he does everything in code, and then he builds everything from command line or whatever, and runs everything that way. And I'm starting to go, I think that might actually be the better way to do things these days. This is just not a great experience. I mean, I'm saying I'm in debug, okay? Just run this test. Are you gonna give me output error, unexpected error crap? Or did you actually work? Did you actually work by actually running it and still failing? Okay, so it still fails, I guess? Yeah, okay, so the whole point of this was to actually say run under the debugger. And let's take a look at the file. It might not be legal to do typer namespace definition or end of file expected. Okay, so let's come over here. Okay. And it's saying that this is at like 11 and 35, which is where those two are, I think. Yeah, 11 and 36. Yeah, it does not like these. So actually, if I did this, and I said stop, I come over here and I just say in tests, because I'm going to get rid of this. Yeah, you need to get rid of these. Yeah, and that's fine. Okay, fine. Fine, fine, fine. No. Get rid of that. So back to here. We have to kind of do the same thing again. At this line, this comes out. And if you have a base type, that, otherwise you don't do that. Right. And then same thing here, except, wait, yeah, except it's the other way. Okay. Now the indentation is going to be a little off, but that's not that big of a deal. Okay, so now let's come back here. Let's say let's run that. Green. Let's run all of them. Let's run all of them as release because, you know, we want to fool Visual Studio again and make it think like it's all screwed up. We'll see what it does now. Oh, and before I do that, let's take this off because I don't want to continually make a file here. So let's build that. Okay, now let's run all tests. Let's see what we get. Yeah, now we got 1,601 tests. No, we don't. We have like 801. Spoke too soon. Too many are failing. Why are you failing? Yeah, but that one passes now. See? I don't know. Well, this one actually is already coded to make a file, which is fine. So we'll go back here and make it debug. Now let's say run this test under the debugger. Stop. Well, at least it didn't give me that stupid unexpected error thing. Okay, why are you complaining? 2 more. Okay. A little unexpected. No. Why does it have 2 there? What did I do wrong? Doesn't have any attributes. Oh. I am an idiot. Because you're in here, you're no longer doing literal the at thing anymore, so it's got to be that. You just need to put in 1. There we go. Okay. Back to release. Clean started. Clean succeeded. Builds failing. Tests failing. Right? Come on. I see my eyes are going back and forth. It's more green this time, I think, which is good. More green. Ah! Oh, okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's actually expected. Because this is now yeah, it's like off by one in terms of what it looks like. That's hilarious that it actually puts 2 there. What was... That should literally be on the literal next line, literally. Unless... No, that's the... Yeah, that should just stop there. I mean, I know I'm just off by 1 on this, but I do have to fix this. Yeah, so let's copy, close. Faith there. Really? Really? There's a space there. Oh, look at that. There's a space there. There's a space there? Yeah, there's a space there. There's a space there? You know, I am almost to the point where I'm just like, this is just stupid. The only thing is that, I actually have created a build command file that I just wanted out there so people, hey, how do I run rocks? How do I know if I've done everything right? Well, you just run build command or build sh and off you go, and hopefully. All right, so this now seems to be building again. Oh, did they all pass? Even though none of these are showing up? Well, that one, oh, so 2 did. What? This is all just messed up. Oh my God. Visual Studio, you know, it's not me, it's you. It's you, Visual Studio. You're the problem. I'm not. Just trying to use a tool. And you're being a tool. Former MVP for Microsoft. I like being on vacation. I get loopy. Now, will they all pass this time? And yes, I'm under release. I did. Okay. Green, green, green. And I think should be good. And we're good. All right, let's check this in. So this is 103 is fixed. Addresses when a committing, publishing. Yeah. Okay, and now let's go back to master. branch, merge into current branch, 103, merge, push. And then let's go back to here, say delete, yes. It's like, why'd you push to the, yeah, whatever. All right, we should be good. We should be also good. I'm just curious. So the one more thing I want to look at, because this gets raised implementation, this gets class absolute suppression. That's the class definition. This is getting the class. Yeah, that is the only place. Okay, cool. We are done. Done, right on time, more or less. So this has been fun. I'm going to say it again, even though I don't know if I'm going to actually get to it, but I'm going to, no more distractions from rocks. That thing should now be closed. Right? Doesn't. I know sometimes it closes it and sometimes it doesn't. I thought this one would. So let's close the issue. We no longer have an issue. Closed. Down to 34 now, right? Yeah, and so this one be, yeah. Stop looking, Jason. Stop looking. This is not important. What is important to you now, Jason, is that. That's what's important to me, is to get this thing working. All right, so that's what I will, absolutely, positively. I promise. I'm making a promise. Pinky swear. I am making a promise that I will focus on this when I got time over the next 4 or 5 days and see what I can get done and move on from there. So thanks for watching. Leave your comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.